Welcome to this dynamic edition of Audit Tuesday GRC podcast, where we explore the emerging threat of AI-armed hackers and what that means to our identity systems. Hi, I'm Shannon Noonan, CEO of High Noon Consulting. To help us understand the risk, we have cyber specialist Alan Sugano, president of ADS Consulting. And on the identity front, we have Garret Grajek, CEO of YouAttest, a 15-patent identity innovator. Welcome, Alan Garret. Let's dive in.
Greetings.
Hey, everybody.
All right, Alan, let's start by setting the stage. Can you tell the audience who you are and what you do at ADS Consulting Group?
Sure. Thanks, Shannon. I'm the president of ADS Consulting Group. We are an MSP and an MSSP. We also have our own cloud infrastructure that's hosted in Switch Reno and Switch Vegas. It's basically infrastructure as a service. We have a heavy security focus, primarily because we have a gun to our head to do so with all the hacks going on, especially with the advent of AI. Shocking, not shocking. I teach classes, security classes for the CIA. I teach a class twice a year for the FDIC. I've done classes for the State Street Bank, Intel Corporation, State of New Jersey. So yeah, we're always looking to see what hackers are doing and how to mitigate the hacks, and limit the damage.
Perfect. Garret, it is your turn.
Good. And first of all,
I want to know how Alan fits in all of that time in doing everything. But Garret, it's your turn.
and team, reach out to Alan. You could ask him any question on cyber hacking, and he'd go, "Oh, okay, this." And we were just talking before this, and he knew 3 points that I had no clue on. And let me say hello to Shannon. Shannon is fantastic. She's been doing these Audit Tuesdays since we first started the company, and world-class racquetball player, I just found out. I had no idea.
Now you're gonna admit my shame, and it's not
There
really
you go. There's no shame.
Love it.
And Shannon was that sports girl. I did not know that. She was softball the whole 9 yards or so.
Yep, athlete here.
And she was coaching me on how not to talk back to coaches. Okay, so that's good. I'm Garret. I'm a nerd on identity. That's what I know. That's what I've been doing for 25 years. I got 15 patents in two-factor, SSO, single sign-on, integration, blockchain, all that around identity. Now I use my talents and more relevantly the team of humans that I've gathered this time to build an identity attestation product. And we'll get into that later. But it's basically understanding both IT-wise and legally who you've given access to. And that's what YouAttest is. Let's go, Shannon.
All right, let's do this. So for the audience, please don't hesitate to ask questions. We are going to be monitoring them and checking in here and there. So if there's anything specific you guys would like, otherwise we're going to run through our list of questions and have a nice candid conversation here. So Alan, we're going to start with you. In your blog, How Hackers Use AI to Gain Access, you mentioned AI-driven threats like digital bloodhounds scanning for weak VPNs. Can you talk about what is going on and the threat around this, and how does ADS help defend it?
That's a great question. So, oh my goodness. Probably the biggest one we've seen is hackers are using AI to discover SSL VPNs. And the biggest takeaway, if you don't leave with anything else, you need to get off of the SSL VPNs for remote access. They're done.
Hey, Alan, can you say that again to people? Because I would always learn when I talk to you, and I was like, hold it, what? So take it away.
So SSL VPNs, right, are historically have been a secure way to provide remote access, but they have exceeded their shelf life, and you need to retire them, considering a zero trust platform, cloud security, SASE, but not SSL VPN. The biggest issue with the SSL VPNs is they require no pre-validation in order to attempt to log in. So hackers are using AI to go, hey, and it's not just a single vendor's SSL VPN, it's all of them. So it doesn't matter which one you're on, they all need to go. But they're like, hey, AI engine, go and identify all the IP addresses that have SSL VPNs and then launch an automated scripted attack against those. So we've seen the attacks go from, maybe 5 or 6 a day to 10,000 in an hour. I mean, it's
You
like,
gotta love AI automation, eh?
yeah, it's efficient, all right. So the bigger thing here is, like martial arts, instead of worrying about blocking punches with your face, how about just not being there? So not being there is just retiring the SSL VPNs. That's probably the most obvious effect in all this. It doesn't matter who you are. All the security vendors are like, yeah, you need to get off of that now. So if you don't leave with anything else, make sure if you have one of those, that you retire it soon, please.
And I guess, Alan, to add to that, what is a good replacement or another option? Because retiring is one thing, but we have a lot of people in this audience that don't even know where to go from there, right?
Yeah, so a cloud secure edge or zero trust network, basically anything that requires some type of pre uh, authentication before you can even attempt to log in is the way to go, because hackers, at least today, might change tomorrow or in 30 seconds, are leaving those types of infrastructures alone. But and I don't want to get vendor specific here. I mean, if somebody wants to hit me up later, I can ramble off 5 million of them. But yeah, so you just need something that requires some type of pre-authentication or pre-validation before you can even attempt to log in, and that's what the new generation. They're typically called, again, cloud secure edge, zero trust networks, even CASB, cloud access security brokers, SASE, secure access service edge. They have a lot of different acronyms, but you definitely want to get on one of those. Obviously, still practice the multi-factor authentication, ideally with an app when you authenticate. That's the right way to do this. But the bigger issue here, in fact, it's so bad that one of the vendors that produces the SSL VPN made an announcement that their stuff is going to stop working on October 31st. They're going to break it. They're like, just to let you know, the stuff that you bought is going to break on October 31st. So they basically put a gun to everybody's head and said, you need to get
So
off.
what is that vendor saying? Are they saying
gave a
switch over to?
timeline. They're no longer going to support it. That's really
They're saying it is so dangerous that you need to get off of it. And you need to get off of it now. And so, and I mean, it's upsetting a lot of people, and I get it, but at the end of the day, they're right. And they are giving her credit for their SASE, CASB, ZTN
Okay.
network thingy. So, but it's that being said, it's still not, even implementing it correctly is not a 5-second fix. But they kind of put a gun to everybody's head and said, you have to get off of this. And at the end of the day, I think it's the responsible thing to do, because the irresponsible thing to do is let clients use it knowing that it's inherently insecure now. And there's been a number of attacks on the SSL VPNs, and it's all bad. Ransomware, compromised Active Directory. I can go on and on and on. But the bigger thing here is you need to get off of it now, please, please, please. We have a YouTube channel, and I made a video about it maybe 6 or 8 months ago. Like I think the SSL is done, and here's confirmation that it is done. So.
And this is really good for everybody who didn't hear that. Really look at this timeline. You've got 5 weeks to assess your situation, and otherwise you may have bigger problems as of October 31st. So
we've been strongly urging all of our clients to get off of this solution, but now there's no everybody has a gun to their head now.
You got no choice now.
Yeah, it's like
welcome to a hard deadline.
Get off or get off.
I feel like this is the year end for a publicly traded company. It ends at midnight. You're done.
Yeah. Stick a fork in me, you're done. That's right.
All right. So ADS offers tools like the free dark web scan to detect compromised credentials. How do you see these scans completing access governance to prevent AI-powered attacks? And what trends are you seeing in the dark web exposure in 2025?
Oh my goodness, a great question. I think, the bigger issue here is for dark web scans or anything like that, at least your data's been exposed. But that being said, you should always act as if your data's been exposed, because unless you've been living under a rock for the last 500 years, everything about you has been exposed. But at least it kind of gives you a little bit of a spidey senses about, okay, just let you know your creds are on the dark web, and if you have any passwords that you're still using that are 500 years old, you should probably change those. Although, the latest thing on the password thing is you shouldn't change your password, but instead use MFA, which effectively changes your password every time you log in, which I like. I think the other thing with this is just knowing that there are turds around, and what Garrett's company does, which is really great, is with attestation, right, is I just call it turd cleanup, right? You just need to make sure that you have turd. And the joke I use is, right, if you leave a bunch of dog poo in your front yard, don't be surprised when somebody steps in it and then tracks it into your house and then spreads it all over your carpet, and they're like, what's that smell? It's like, oh yeah, I forgot to do the turd cleanup. So it's just, I think it's helpful in that, and especially what Garrett stuff does is, if somebody gets in and they re-enable account, or somebody has excessive rights that nobody was aware of, it is exponentially more difficult to detect than even an outside attack. So,
Right.
and that's where that, instead of worrying about blocking the punch with your face, how about just not doing that and clean up the turds? If you don't have any turds in your front yard, you don't have to worry about people dragging in dog poo into your house because there are no turds, right?
Right.
And I think that, and we've looked at Garrett stuff. I think the biggest value add that he has is it automates an extremely historically difficult type of audit that they do, because it's like herding cats that, oh, by the way, don't want to be herded.
And
I will use that,
being
Alan.
herded right now because and it really does help. That those types of audits are very difficult to do, and they're not a lot of fun, but his product actually makes it not, I won't say it makes it easy, but it certainly makes it easier.
well, it's cleaner. It's clean, it's crisp, and
Yes.
You know what you're looking at. You're not worrying about the accuracy of it, right? You know it's accurate, and you've got the information.
And the added benefit also in that is ongoing auditing, right? So once you clean this up, as soon as you see a turd, you can pick it up, right? You don't let it
Remove the access.
Yeah,
Yep.
just right. Oh, look, a turd, let's clean it up. So it's ongoing. So, and I think the other advantage of that, right, is, well, oh, what would you rather do? Wait for you to have like Bandini Mountain in front of your house, or do you want to pick them up just as they go? And I would pick them up as they go. Is probably a lot better than waiting for Bandini to accumulate in front of your house, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that that's probably the biggest thing with the dark web scans. Is another thing is that it at least gives you a heads up that, hey, this stuff could be used against you and weaponized against you. So shields up, just to let you know. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway with any of these scans, whether it be dark web or even credit monitoring. And by the way, everybody should freeze your credit, right? Don't,
Yep.
just
Get the monitorings that tell you every time
just
charging.
yes, please. Your stuff, your personal information is out there, and you have to act accordingly. So, yeah.
Love that. So you highlight in your blog how AI-powered hackers use techniques like password mind reading to exploit weak credentials, if I could speak. How can ADS clients leverage YouAttest automated access reviews to detect and secure vulnerable accounts before AI attacks strike?
I think that one of the big things is multi-factor authentication is probably one of the best ways to protect your creds today. And you can, and it, not to say that you intentionally want to have a weak password, but you're effectively changing your password every time. And by the way, the duos and okay, I'm here. I said I was going to
Yeah.
mention anything, but duos and the octas of the world, something that pops up and says, "Hey, are you trying to log in?" You tap yes or no. In our opinion, those are one of the strongest methods of MFA because they're notifying you when somebody attempts to log in. And we tell our clients, if you get what's called a duo push or an octa push notification that somebody's trying to log in and you didn't try to log in, you know instantly that somebody has already has your username and password because they needed that to do the push. So that's
Mhm.
a shields up. What the heck? It's not even that somebody's attempting to get in. It's your creds have already been compromised. We better figure this out in a New York minute. So
Right.
I
Go
think
in,
that is
reset, and start over again.
that is one of the absolute best ways to protect your creds. And so I used to write for Windows IT Pro magazine, and I wrote an article about virtualization security. This was maybe 15 years ago. And I talked about doing MFA for administrators before they got in to do administration in the virtualization network, which should be a segmented network, blah, blah, blah. And when I wrote the article, the reviewing, because every time you write an article, it has to go through review, and then the editors at the time said, "You're freaking crazy. Nobody's going to do MFA, especially when you're inside the network. Blah blah blah, yada yada yada." I'm like, "Well, do you want to be secure or not?" And they said, if somebody gets in there and it's already been proven, it's going to be really bad because they can bypass all your security. Fast forward to today, everybody's doing MFA, not just admins. So maybe it was a little ahead of the curve, but that's what we like to be. And that's another thing is anytime we see a new hack or how did they get in? What was the angle? How do we fare against that based on our current security posture? What can we improve? We're always looking at that because it is so dangerous. But I think to protect your creds, the MFA, multi-factor authentication with an app, or even a hardware token is one of the best ways to protect against those types of attacks.
I love that. It's amazing how the hardware tokens are coming back.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's how I
Right.
started my author career as
circle,
an
right?
RSA guy
Well,
with
it's
the
even
tokens.
that like that, and then the YubiKeys. Keys. I know we're not,
Yes.
Right.
but they're all like it's all coming back, right? We all
Mhm.
went electronic, and now everybody wants that hard line in. Soon we won't be Wi-Fiing anymore.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
Shannon, let me just, I'm going to do one slide
Yeah,
when we're,
jump on in here,
yeah,
Garrett.
yeah, when we're talking about, what YouAttest does, because what we're saying, a lot of these hacks, and if you go to the blog I just put out this weekend, youattest.com/blog, the first one, it goes into a lot of these AI hacks and then how YouAttest helps. What was relevant in the last conversation is this is the world. We got someone handling risk, someone handling security, saying, I've got these regulations, guidances, frameworks, but more relevantly, I've got all these identity stores, and I mean all, the not just the ones listed, but the ones that are real succinct to finance and insurance and healthcare. A lot of just one-off products that aren't integrated into anything. What we've done is figured out how to imbibe all the metadata. That is all the who has access to what, the stuff that no one knows after a couple of years. Privilege creep is real. It is real. I worked the help desk actually in Shannon's background in Boston at Security Dynamics for a month, and people got access by yelling at me. Okay.
Oh,
I'm
geez.
sorry. My employee needs access. Okay, that's privilege creep. What this does is imbibe, what UAttest does is imbibe all these in things. And then as a GRC practitioner, this is you inside your company or your consultant or the MSP. We have multi-tenant versions. It pushes out attestation campaigns. What is that? That's actual email that they have to click on, or a Slack message they have to click on. It says, these are my employees, these are my reports that have access. And what we've learned in the 5 years, 3.9 million times of doing this, is that there's lots that can happen. They can say, well, I don't no, that's Bob's no longer my employee. That person's over at Paul, or Paul has been transferred over to Jane, all that kind of stuff. Our product handles that workflow without you coding. It allows every reviewer can accept the entitlement, can reject the retirement, or can delegate, keep pushing it out. So that process happens thousands of times a day. In some of our reports, up to 900,000 roles are attested, and that's all accumulated into a report, okay? These reports are used by the security, the compliance, and in your audit. All these audits down here ask you to execute on the principle of least privilege, and that's what it's doing. It's doing the security work, but it's also doing the report that's for your governance. That's when we talk about what YouAttest does around these hacks, this is what we're relevant to. Okay, back to our regular scheduled programming.
I love hearing about all the updates that are coming with YouAttest.
Yeah.
Always nice to hear. All right, Alan, we're going back to you. With your experience as a former Microsoft MVP and author of the Real World Network Troubleshooting Manual, what's one practical tip you'd give SMBs to hardening their networks against AI-driven password guessing or puzzle piece attacks?
Boy, that's a loaded question. A couple of things. One is have us, actually longer is better, and length trumps complexity in terms of passwords. So actually, a 15-character password, especially in Active Directory, is like the magic length. 15 characters or longer. And then the pushback is, well, I don't know a 15-character word. Fine, then use a phrase. I really love my dog Spot. Okay, don't use that, but something like that, right? Yeah, length trumps complexity. It doesn't need to be complex, it just needs to be long. The current now thought is don't change your passwords because it causes other things like help desk stress and other things. But and by the way, another really important thing, and I heard this many years ago at one of the conferences I spoke at, and I'm like, oh my God, the speaker's right. So, which is, if you're going to set a lockout policy, set the threshold really high. And the reason why that is that most people go, well, okay, I asked them, so what are you trying to do with a lockout policy? Are you trying to identify people that have poor memories, that can't type? Because that's what's going to happen if you set the threshold relatively low. And you see this guidance like, oh, 5 incorrect login attempts within 5 minutes. Like, that is going to kill your help desk. It's going to crush it. And by the way, it also leads to social engineering. Oh, like that never happened except to MGM casinos where somebody came in and right. So that's if you when everybody's like, oh, reset my password, reset, wolf. After a while, you're like, shut that stupid thing off, and you tend to forget it. We recommend actually setting the threshold very high. So we calculate, okay, if somebody can log in every 5 seconds, that's 20 logins per minute, then manually, right? So we recommend setting the threshold really high to like maybe 60 or 70 logins within a 5-minute period, because if your goal for a lockout policy is to identify a scripted attack, if that gets triggered, guess what? You're under a scripted attack, right? So then the question is, where is it coming from? So and if that gets triggered, there's a 99.9% chance you're under a scripted attack. You better figure out where it's coming from, as opposed to wolf. Oh, reset I can't remember I can't type. Oh, nah. So that's another thing that seems to be the other thing that can be used for, and is with a lockout policy, can be used as a denial of service attack. So let's just assume for a second that I'm a jerk and I'm a hacker and I just want to screw with the company. I can probably figure out really quickly how many, it's the users in the company, first initial, last name. If I can manage to lock out all the accounts and you don't have an automatic unlock policy after 10 or 15 minutes, you're going to be very sad. I just got locked out of my own house, right? If they manage to lock out all the accounts, or at least, so that's another angle of the lockout policy, where what's the joke? Ain't no fun when the rabbit's got a gun. So you're rabbit hunting, and all of a sudden the rabbit turns around, oh yeah, right, right. So So that's one of those things where it could be used against you, and it's not, that's a really bad look anyway.
That's
So
good.
I think password length, a really high threshold for account lock policy, and the other thing we talked about, of course, which is multi-factor authentication.
And I have to go on top of yelling about the wonderful MG, not wonderful, but we had some good webinars around that, around the MGM Caesars hack, because that
mm,
was a direct takeover of the IAM. That was the
yes,
IAM, and they were nasty. Because what they did, y'all, is they got the admin accounts, they escalated the privileges, got admin access to the IAM, and then created their own IDP. So they
yes,
were, yeah,
a
they were
fake one.
asked. They were
Yeah.
asked. So how many AD aughts were done off the rogue IDP server? And they're like, we don't know, because it wasn't their
Didn't have
server.
eyes on it, right? The only
Yeah,
probably answer is a lot.
yes, a lot. So I have to talk about in 1 sec. So one thing that is relevant, what we do is we plug into the activity of the IAM, and we have the ability to say you can set over triggers. So if the IAM, not only we are testing at a static time what the roles are, but you say, hey, if someone gets the admin account,
Right.
gets admin privileges to the IAM, I want these people to be alerted. We were working, Shannon, with someone at Silence. Shannon and I worked at Silence together, and one of the really bright security guys went over to a healthcare company that's using YouAttest. After that hack, he wasn't had nothing to do with GRC. He turned on the triggers of YouAttest on the IAM so he could see if someone ever got access to the IAM admin privileges. So that's one more thing that we should put in our, quiver
Mm,
of arrows. To
yes,
say,
The
great
hey,
value add.
notifications are huge, right? If you don't have a notification saying someone has access to something that never gets access to,
right.
you don't know about it until you go do that user access review, as Alan was saying earlier. And how many people really do those?
Right, right. And in that security person has said is hold it. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of, but this type of alert I'm gonna get it specifically because there's not that many, super admins to the IDP. And he got that alerts. He get those alerts. Yes.
That's a great value add. Hey, just to let you know, there's this new IDP. What the heck, right?
Exactly. Exactly. That
Um,
happens to be in Harbin, China. Other than that, there's no problem.
but if you can catch it, and this is another thing about just security in general. If you can, it's almost like I don't want to say cancer, but cancer. If you can catch it early, you're probably going to be okay.
Wow.
The
But
earlier the better. The earlier the
yes,
better.
the earlier the better. Early detection is key, right? If you can catch it early, you can really limit the damage. But so in that case, right, if UHS had been there and they realized
Yes.
this fake IDP, you could before
Yes.
bad things happen. But let me just stand in the corner. Everything's great.
Everything's great. Everything's great.
No, it's not.
The odds are
Okay,
working.
good, right?
It's
And
amazing
then
how hackers, if
2 weeks
they own the auth,
later,
they'll make sure they work. Everyone gets in. No
yeah,
help desk calls.
yeah, it's just not good. So
No.
that's a great value add, but and that's a bigger theme. But let's back up a sec. Part of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
reason why MGM got um, compromised and they're an easy target, right? Is can you reset my password again? Right? I mean, that's how they initially gained access. So, which is part of the reason why you don't want to set your thresholds low for a lockout policy, right? Because
Right.
it's just so much noise after a while. It's called log fatigue, right? Wolf, 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 wolf.
Yeah,
Ah,
then nobody, right. Yeah.
yeah.
You
When
start looking at
everybody
these
is
fake.
when everybody is special, nobody is. Right.
Fascinating twist. And it will be interesting to see how that changes because most were like thresholds are saying you can't have above a 5 or a 3 lockout in all
Yeah.
of these different frameworks. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting twist on an industry standard that's been there for some time.
And also even the issue of complexity versus length. Oh, it has to be complex and 8 characters. Like, just make it long. Drop the mic. You're done.
Yeah, do
Set the
15.
threshold really high,
Just do
chop
a
them like
15 character. Let's make it 20, 15 to 20, which you're seeing more and more of.
Yes.
Right? But you still have those organizations that are only doing 8, and
Yeah,
it's
15 is the magic
amazing.
number if you're in an Active Directory environment, because you're guaranteed that it'll be stored with a stronger encryption. And this is going way, way back, but sometimes there's a switch you can change in domain controllers to store it as a weak. I'm getting too technical, but anyway, 15 guarantees that it will be stored with the strongest encryption possible. But that being said, MFA, MFA, MFA,
MFA.
every
Love
day,
it.
twice on Sunday.
We
Please,
should create a
please,
song
please.
on that. We should do like a
We should.
rap with it.
We should. I'm feeling a new, my new song's gonna drop tomorrow.
See, we
Yeah.
West Coast, East Coast is not in competition, Joe. There's nothing but love here. There you go.
Yeah, and the other thing that can really help against these types of AI attacks is application whitelisting is probably one of the best ways to prevent against a ransomware attack. So you need
Yep.
to have that in place. And actually, in terms of deep fakes and other things, end user training is actually, and here's the dirty secret, right? No matter what IT or your security department, whatever, puts in place, users can drive the network off a cliff, right? And the analogy I say is, okay, your car has airbags and collision detection and seat belts and blind spot monitoring. But if you make the conscious decision, because you're, know any better, to physically, because you don't know how gravity works, to physically drive your car off a cliff, all of those protections are not going to help you. So the end user training is important to keep everybody's spidey senses tingling, and like, oh, this seems a little weird. And so that end user training is actually very, very important. Also, and identifying deep fakes. Deep fakes are getting better, exponentially better. We talked about this,
Scary.
or right? Yeah, scary. Like they're not twice as good. They're like 50 times better within a week. So the one angle that we've seen with deepfakes is to try and identifying them is take a step back and think about the scenario that you're watching and see if it's really feasible or realistic. So case in point, I had one of my friends, there's these two Asian kids and they must have been like 5 or 6 and they're, sparring, doing Kung Fu and stuff. And and it looks like it's a brother and sister and they're just beating the tar out of each other. Right. I mean, just like pail makers, boom, boom, kick in the face, and the kids would fall back and they'd get up and they'd be like, okay, come on, let's go again. When you think about that, and my friend showed it to me, and I'm like, come on, dude, this isn't real. It's not, there's no way this is real. Because you think about it, when you were 5 or 6 and you got punched in the face, or just punched, not even necessarily in the face, right? You're going to be on the floor crying. That's it. Whoever gets hit in the face first loses. That's the rule, even up until like middle school or high school, right? Yeah, I'm sure everybody saw fights in middle school and high school. The person that got hit first is the person that loses. So, you really gonna pop up? You know, these are 5 or 6 year old. They're not in the MMA, right? It doesn't work like that. So I think if you can take a step back and think about, well, is this really a realistic scenario? And if the answer is no, then that can be a way, not the only way, but a way to start to spot a deep fake.
Yeah.
There was
And
another.
I say straight out, what I've seen is because I came up through the authentication world, was an SE for RSA, started two-factor at SecureAuth. What I look at is what we have to do now on the important data, and there was that huge transfer that we talked about, just the deep fake that fooled out the CFO. We got multiple tiers because I'm seeing like the healthcare groups that we're attesting of the real data that makes the difference around their PII, around their PHI, and also their IP for their pharmaceuticals. They have 4 tiers of attestation. Who can have that data? And it's just the best practice. And I'm not saying you have to have 4 tiers, But workflow is important. Multiple humans, and then you
Right.
say these deepfakes, someone's getting pulled out. And that's what we talked about. There was an AI attack where CFO just, granted, millions of dollars. Like, hold it. Shouldn't there be a process in place, not just for money transfers, but also for IP access?
Yeah. Well, there should be totally. Most people forget about IP, but that's another
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
for the day.
Yeah, because IP, right? And we're not talking about like IP address, we're talking intellectual property,
IP,
Yes,
right? Just to be clear, I'm just gonna throw it out there, right?
crown jewels of the company.
Yes.
But that's because usually it's not part of some compliance check that sits there and says this box needs to be assessed. It's part of other parts of the company. So anyhow.
Yeah, and it's obviously super valuable.
Mhm.
Yeah, but there was another case. The other thing that should be really a red flag, anything to do, obviously with IP, since we mentioned it, but anything to do with money,
Yes.
Yes.
anything to do with money
Nice.
should be a whoa, wait, hey, talk to him.
Transfer, spending.
Yes,
Yeah.
super, super important. That should be a huge red flag, especially money with urgency. If we don't get this money, we're going to lose this
Well,
deal.
that's what I said. I
Fired
started my
and
career. I was in
da.
Boston working help desk and just someone yelling at the help desk person. I get
Yeah,
this salesperson doesn't access. We can't close this deal. I'll have
yeah,
your job. Those were real conversations. And I
And
absolutely.
remember.
they're still happening today, but now
Right.
you don't know if it's a real person at the end of the day. Well, you may, but there are times you don't. We're going to all have secret codes soon just to talk to people.
Yes.
But what's the code before I leave the playground? Not allowed to leave it without the special code.
That's right. That's right. Not allowed to leave. Stranger danger. Anyway. But yeah,
All right.
that's it is it, the more urgent it seems, or the more somebody's yelling at you, the more, and it's hard, right? Because we're all human and like, I don't want to lose my job. If you like your job,
Right.
right? I don't want to lose my job. Um, but you kind of need to take a step back and go, am I getting scammed here? And I tell my coworkers, right, I will never fire you for being too careful, right?
Mm,
I will defend you even if a client's like, well, so and so, I'm like, okay, you shouldn't be yelling at us. You should be thanking us
yeah.
because we just saved you a gazillion dollars, right, or whatever it is.
Well,
So
and MSPs and MSSPs have to be really careful because
yeah,
they're getting lawsuits now and they're going to be held accountable for things. So they really have to take into account, verification, validation, all those fun words that we love to say, but there's accountability now coming into all of this. And we're
yes,
seeing it,
absolutely,
right? You saw it with the Clorox lawsuit that happened. So
yes. Yes, well, what's the joke, right? Why would you rob banks? Because that's where the money is.
yeah,
Why would you go after an MSP? Well, it's a force multiplier, right? So
like
yeah, we're held to definitely a higher standard, which is why, right, only the paranoid survive. That's why we're constantly evaluating stuff because they're like, hey, da, da, da. And I've been accused of being Chicken Little, you know, hey, the sky's
sky
falling.
is falling. So let's
Yeah,
be
like,
honest,
yeah,
it
guess
is
what? The sky
falling.
is falling and it's gonna fall on your head. Right. So let me get out of the way. Right.
Ellen, that's actually a good question. I wanted to ask you directly off to whatever, because I was on a call the other day and it was about, Garrett, what you're saying is right. No one's going to look at Ellen and say that's not right. And God knows, Shannon knows her stuff. What, where does this message have to go into the enterprise to be effective? I mean, who needs to be discussed, and what mechanisms do you use to make sure that the message is not only heard but acted on?
It's a great question. I mean, our message to a technical person is different.
Right.
It's different but the same, right? As opposed to a C-suite person, right? So if we're talking to but they all need to hear the message, the
Yes.
same message, but maybe just a slightly different tone, right? For a C-suite person, it's talking about risk management, protecting IP, the value of the company. What your potential exposure is if something goes sideways? What are the potential costs? What's your cost of downtime? all of those things, the C-level executive suite, I'll call them, those are all things that they need to be aware of. If we're talking more to a technical person, it's like, well, technically this is how this works and why it's so effective. But I
Well,
think it's really, really important to,
let's go back to the business goals and showing
yes,
them how to proactively monitor and help the business, right?
yes,
Versus showing them how to do it in a technical format, right? They're not the coders. They're the ones that want to just give the idea to the coders to make something happen.
yes. And I try to use analogies, especially talking with C-suite people about things that might maybe more familiar with. But even Garrett's program, right? And we had a discussion about this is, yeah, you can talk to the CIO or IT manager, but really the CFO, right? If
Yeah,
this came out,
yeah,
what, how bad would it be, Mr. or Miss CFO, right? This is your exposure, this and 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 they're like, oh, okay, I get it now, right? Now we have a significant and severe financial exposure, so we better do something about it. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. I agree. That's what I was basically schooled on, is that this is a CFO discussion,
Yeah.
because it affects the bottom line, and it'll affect the financial ability of the enterprise.
Yes. Yes. It will have a material impact on the financial health of the institution. How's that?
Good wording. Material impact.
Great word. Great word. So, all right. I haven't seen if there's any questions right now online. I figured we'd check in real quick to see if there's any there.
No, we can jump in and just wrap it up,
All right. Yeah, so let's wrap this up then. So, Alan, is there any last words you'd like to share with our audience before we pass this on to Garret?
I think learn how to spot deep fakes or be aware that they're out there and they're very, very good. Step back and see if they're realistic. MFA with your is the best way to protect your credentials, username and password. Application whitelisting is one of the best ways to protect against ransomware attacks, but end user training is also important, but more and retire SSL VPNs. We talked about that at the top of the hour. But the bigger thing is you always need, you can never drop your guard, right? I don't care where you are, what you're doing, always shields up, keep your guard up, or you're gonna have to block punches with your face.
I couldn't agree more. Regular practices, just the way MFA is a regular practice that every time you authenticate, what we're seeing, and yeah, I'll talk about YouAttest, is that by people checking their permissions and using an automated tool, they start checking their permissions. They were checking, I was working with a healthcare finance company who was checking their permissions once a year, right? Once a year. Now they turned on the triggers, and now they have monthly access reviews on admin accounts. Okay, so they're on top of their game. So you got to have a practices and procedures.
Well, and then a tool, right? That's the
Yeah,
benefit. Practice is one thing, but getting out of the manual component and seeing it
getting out of manual.
continuously, and
Yeah.
that's the benefit of what YouAttest does. It creates automation and fluidity from the source.
And Ellen, how can people reach you? And we're going to have you talk a little about your enterprise too, Shannon. So first, yeah.
Probably the best way, somebody can send an email to info@adscon.com. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Is the best way to contact us via email. I also have a YouTube channel. You can just go to YouTube and search for ADS Consulting Group, and it should take you to our YouTube link.
Fantastic.
And
I'll put that in the
LinkedIn is
LinkedIn
great.
chat.
If you want to connect on LinkedIn, that would be great. You can just search for my name.
Alan does some great work out there, and that's how this one started. I read his blog about AI hacking, so he does some great work. He's a good member of the community. Shannon, tell people a little about yourself and your practice at HGC, because I got distracted at the beginning, and then how to get a hold of you.
I don't mind. We've done this so many times. They've heard my voice.
Exactly.
So we run a compliance and security organization. So we do gap assessments through remediation, and then we work with organizations like Alan to do the implementation and continuous monitoring. So everything from Sarbanes-Oxley to HIPAA to FedRAMP, We have a good old time in compliance over here.
No one knows more about compliance than Shannon. She was key and central when I started YouAttest and advised me and how this product should be running and what it should be delivering. So Shannon knows her stuff in GRC. Here at YouAttest, really easy to get a hold of us. Just info@youattest.com or look me up on LinkedIn, Garret Grajek. There's only one of them.